we're wanting people to have jobs, and I think we have been pretty clear that we don't want them to go out there and overdrill to drill down prices. And we also don't want a spike in the prices to where it gets up to 100, which would then incentivize them to overdrill. And so we're not calling for them to drill at will. However, there is a reality that we have to face as Americans, which is if something is profitable, the nature of our capitalistic system is people will do it.
There's one that came out with the New York Times. U.S. oil companies find energy independence isn't so profitable. Ryan, I was at a SPE event about 2 months ago, and this guy had a graph that had 15, 20 companies, and it was showing the graph from a 30-year period, and it was looking at their income, their cash flow, but also looking at the long-term profitability of their ventures. And it was staggering at how many of them weren't turning a profit when you looked at the 30-year outlook for some of these companies. So this is an interesting article with some some things in there that a lot of people aren't aware of. A lot of these companies, when they go in and drill, they produce a lot of oil in the first 2 or 3 years, and then it starts to slack off. So it's very interesting seeing how some of these companies are adapting to the market.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've kind of got mixed emotions on this, Josh. There's so many things for play, and I don't think I told you about this. So our buddy Speakner left a review on the Energy Week podcast, and what did he say? Where's it at? E&P in the Permian keep pumping into oblivion. Oil investors are fed up, as well as banks seeing the light. Every podcast out there lauds how great U.S. oil production is, energy independence, etc. All this pumping will cause reserve bankruptcies and increased oil unemployment. That is what oil investors are hoping to see, and are about to see a lot of it. And frackers cause this on themselves. And I found that interesting comment because, you know, as you know, there's so many things that you talk about offline that we can't get into the podcast. We simply just don't have time to break down all of our thoughts, all of our opinions. I will say this. This is something we have to talk about offline. We can talk about it here. Is that when you're reading oil and gas news, you have to understand that oil and gas news is geared for certain types of audience. So most sports news, for instance, if you turn on Sports Center, most of that news is geared for your average sports fan. Now, you might have someone right now at the NBA free agency who comes on and talks about the salary cap implications or something like that, but pretty much all the news is pretty high level, and it really is for just your general consumer. Oil and gas news is not the same. Oil and gas news is for some is for investors, some is for jobs, people looking for jobs, some is for C-suite type people. There's all kinds of levels of how the news is, who the news is for. And so I thought about that, his comment about, we're encouraging that. And on this show, Josh, I think on this show, one of the things, and he was talking about Energy Week, but on this show particularly, I think what I would say to that is that when you read this piece or you read that criticism, is that, we're wanting people to have jobs, and I think we have been pretty clear that we don't want them to go out there and overdrill to drill down prices. And we also don't want a spike in the prices to where it gets up to 100, which would then incentivize them to overdrill. And so we're not calling for them to drill at will. However, there is a reality that we have to face as Americans, which is if something is profitable, the nature of our capitalistic system is people will do it.